Met Your Mother traumatized me 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was a naive girl living in a small apartment with my boyfriend, eagerly waiting for the conclusion to one of my most favorite TV shows at the time, How I Met Your Mother. Then the finale happened and I got so badly traumatized that I cried for the rest of the day, and I can only assume you have been traumatized too to a certain degree if you found your way to this video. So let us unpack this thing. How I Met Your Mother was a sitcom created by Craig Thomas and Carter Bays. The show aired from 2005 till 2014. It followed the lives of our 5 main characters: Ted, Barney, Marshall, Lily, and Robin. But really, it was mostly centered around Head in the Clouds' romantic Ted and his undying, everlasting, Google eyes search for love. True love. The one. The future Mrs. Ted Mosby, the mother of his kids. You see, the entire series was structured as stories told by an older future Ted to his twin kids about how he met their mother, hence the name. So where's the problem? Well, as everything in life, nothing is perfect, and even this show had quite a lot of flaws. And I'm not even talking about this tweet from creator Carter Bays, which we can only hope was talking about Barney or the issue of Barney himself or even Ted, but that is for a different video. No, what I'm talking about right now is the ending, the finale. On the first episode, we hear future Ted, that for some godforsaken reason was played by Bob Saget, not even played, dubbed, sit his kids down with the promise to tell them how he met their mother. He then takes them and us to Manhattan of 2005 to McLaren's bar, where he meets the most amazing girl ever. She loves dogs, she loves scotch, she loves Ghostbusters, and hates olives. The perfect packaged embodied in one Canadian girl. The date gets cut short because of her work. Foreshadowing! And he misses his chance of kissing her. With the help of Marshall, Lily, and Barney, and Ranjit, hello! Ted rekindles that moment later on the night with the theft and subsequently gifting of the blue French horn, the one that she saw in their date earlier on and she stated that she liked. And just as we think all is great, our overly romantic Ted blurts out that he loves her. Granted, his actual words were, "I think I'm in love with you." That's bad enough, and nobody likes insta-romance Ted. That of course turns her off and she explains she's not looking for anything too serious, but still when they part ways, it's with this open-end, soft smiling, sort of flirting way. To which the kids in the future go, cool, that was neat. And older Bob Saget says, well, hold on, that's how I met your Aunt Robin. Sit on tight, kids, that's a long one. We then spent 9 seasons with Ted, falling in and out of love, getting over Robin, getting under Robin, in and out of love again, while listening the whole entire time to future Ted talking about how freaking awesome the real mother is in comparison to every single girl. Kids, your mother's robot paintings were the best. Her rendition to Olivia Rose always made me cry. We learned that she was a bass player. That episode that we learned that she had a yellow umbrella. And oh my god, Ted finds a yellow umbrella. And now we're chasing that yellow umbrella for years, hoping to catch the girl holding it. Basically, they've created the biggest manic pixie dream girl ever. And we longed for her for 9 seasons alongside Ted himself. Then finally, the 9th last season comes, gifting us the mother at long last. And we eagerly try to soak up every detail about her while watching how she interacts with every other person except for Ted, because that is only for the ending. And we get like flashes from future Ted telling us about the relationship, like bits and pieces. And we try to get to know this character and we barely get a sense of the girl before, ta-da! Season finale! Oh yeah, she dies. She's been dead the whole entire time. Those kids are orphans. And the real kicker in the nuts is that Ted is still 20 years later, in love with Robin. We thought we were chasing the yellow umbrella, but it was the blue French horn all along. And this is why I decided to pick up a camera to finally unpack this. It only took me 10 years to get over the initial trauma. I loved the show. My boyfriend at the time and I would constantly watch this every time we ate, which means we saw this show every single day for years. We knew the episodes by heart. For a while, about 50% of our actual conversations were direct quotes from the show. We joke when the show ends, we'll probably break up because we won't have anything to say to each other. We ended up getting married. So I wasn't a casual watcher. I was a fan. Not a theory writing informed type of fan, but a fan nonetheless. No diss to those type of fans. Those fans keep the fandom going for years. So when I say I cried at the finale, I mean I bawled my eyes out for the better half of an hour, and my husband had to console me for the rest of the day. Was I extra invested because I wanted Robin and Barney together? Yes. Did I feel an extra punch in the gut because my mother also passed away from cancer and the whole thing just re-traumatized me? Hell yes. But it wasn't just me who reacted badly to the ending. Almost everyone did. So much so that the creators had to publicly stand behind what they did. But eventually, they sort of gave us an alternative ending, which nobody was really happy with. So, what was even the point? So, what was it that they did? We thought we were listening to this great story of finding love, a soulmate that was always just around the corner waiting to be caught. But it was about the love that was already there all along, just not the right time and place. Which actually was the whole point why Ted and Robin broke up in the first place. Ted wanted the old original American dream. He wanted to settle down, a wife, a house, kids, maybe even a dog. Robin never wanted that, apart from the dog. She wanted to go out into the world and make the most out of herself. Her career, the same one that cut their first date and kiss short, was the most important thing to her. You go, girl, you do you. If I was a cynic, I would argue that they used the mother's character as a placeholder womb for Ted to play house and dad until Robin felt herself accomplished enough to go back to her former lover without actually needing to raise them kids and give him his fifth chance with her a long last. But I'm not a cynic, and I want to go deeper than that. When you think about it, I can understand why the creators thought that we would be more invested in Ted and Robin than Ted and the mother. We spent so much more time with Ted and Robin. We knew how they were together. We developed a relationship with them both as a couple and standalone characters. We didn't have that with the mother. We only saw her for a few scattered scenes throughout the last season, and only half of those were with Ted. Christine Milioti does a phenomenal job. Arguably, we should have liked Ted and Robin better. We should have been Team Blue French Horn by the end of it. And yet, the majority of us weren't. If Robin was endgame all along and the mother was only a red herring, I feel that the creators missed the mark with the herring. They made the mother unquestionably endgame. They tried to give us this amazing twist, but it didn't just not land with the audience. It exploded. A good twist is a surprise turn or ending that was foreshadowed throughout the story. The dreaded subverted expectations, if you will. As a storyteller, you want to take your audience on a journey. You want to lure them in. They want to grab their attention. One way of doing so is with twists and turns to subvert their expectations, making them want to stay just a little bit longer to see what comes next. And of course, it makes just a more interesting story. A great example would be Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson wrote both Star Wars: The Last Jedi and Knives Out. The Last Jedi was a controversial movie, to say the least. You couldn't watch a YouTube essay dissecting that movie without hearing subverted expectations. He did surprise us with a lot of choices that were made there, and most of those choices were peculiar, not on par with the story or the characters themselves. So much so that the legendary Mark Hamill said to Johnson, "I pretty much fundamentally disagree with every choice you've made for this character," which is a rough thing to say to the writer. The movie as a whole was received with mixed feelings. Those twists and turns didn't work, but they sure did with his other movie, Knives Out. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, I'm going to avoid spoilers and just say that in that movie, Johnson managed to show that subverting expectation can work fantastically well when done right. It can be a whole video by itself to dissect why Knives Out worked and The Last Jedi didn't. But a big point that I can make right now would be the fact that he was the original creator for Knives Out, unlike Star Wars. You can get a character to act in a surprising manner or a new manner and still make it make sense because you know or should know the inner workings of that characters. It's easier to make those twists better when the seeds to that change have been planted and festering for a while, giving you time from the beginning to foreshadow what is to come, which why a lot of things in The Last Jedi didn't make sense. So was this the problem with How I Met Your Mother? Did they not handle the twist well? Even though they had several different writers join in and write, Craig Thomas and Carter Bass had their hands on the wheel the entire time. And they did try to follow those rules of foreshadowing, and yet most of us rebelled. Maybe because while one hand was foreshadowing the death of the mother, yes, there were some few scenes that made fans go conspiracy mode before the finale, and giving us a suspiciously longing look or two from Ted towards Robin. The other hand was too busy in showing us the exact opposite. The exact complete opposite. A specific scene came to my mind when I was writing this: the ending of the episode Brunch from the second season. In this episode, Robin is supposed to meet Ted's parents for the very first time. It's actually a really good episode. Anyways, Ted finds out that not only did his parents separate 2 years prior, they just didn't know how to tell him that, they were actually now divorced. Now, please look at this picture. Ted and his dad are both dressed in red. Robin and his mom are both dressed in blue. But wait. Let's hear what his parents have to say when asked why they didn't work.
Your father's kind of a head in the clouds romantic, and I'm much more down to earth.
He wanted kids and she
Also wanted kids.
I mean, you were mirroring Ted and Robin with his now divorced parents. You were telling us from the get-go that not only is Robin not the mother, but throughout the show, in scenes like that, that even on a very basic fundamental level, they were not suited for each other. That if they were to end up together and married, it would end in a divorce. This is season 2. These scenes were scattered along throughout the show. Like in the 9th season, that Ted explains about the balloon metaphor that his mom told him to hold on tight to the balloon that he wanted. We see how he lets go of the balloon of Robin and she floats into the air. Time and again, we were shown that they were not right for each other. We saw how Ted was growing and changing, letting go of Robin. And Robin, well, Robin had Barney. Side note about Barney. When the show aired, it worked. He was my favorite character, like many other fans, and now, I don't know if times have changed, I have changed, or a combination of both, but watching a lot of what he does now is freaking cringe at best and troubling at worst. Barney is a very problematic character. I know that the most terrible of his aspects were done with the comedic purposes of exaggeration and ridiculousness, and comedy, as always, has a different perspective than drama. Reality is bent for comedic purposes, and things that one can pull off in a comedy won't be digestible in drama. Like Monica putting that turkey over her head. You're not going to see somebody in Euphoria do that. That is not to say that this excused any of it. A lot of his actions hit very differently now, but that's like for a different video. But actually, not really, because Barney was flawed. We may view his flaws differently, more severely now, but the fact of the matter was that Barney was a flawed and a scarred man. But once he realized he was in love with Robin, we saw one of the best, and I would say the best, character arc in this series. Every little step towards his understanding that money, alcohol, and sex were great, but not as great as being with somebody he truly cared for, was nothing short than magical, because you didn't expect that out of him. He was a man-child in love with himself, with no want or need to grow. We later unpack his very rocky childhood, and one can argue that the lack of a father figure really did a number on how he interpreted adult romantic relationship. That scene in the episode after he meets his real dad and in a rage tried to take off the basketball hoop his little half-brother had because he didn't have one, so why should that kid get it?
If you were gonna be some lame suburban dad, why couldn't you have been that for me?
That broke me. With Robin, he lets himself be vulnerable again. In fact, most of the scenes where he is vulnerable were with Robin. And we get to see this massive, deep change in a character that we didn't think was going to happen. And not just change, but grow as a person. That moment when he hoped they could go back together, but she declines. Killed me. Because that was one of those rare moments we saw into him without his mask on. If we take the mirroring as an example again, there was this episode in season 7 where Robin thinks she might be pregnant with Barney. The episode starts with 2 twin kids sitting on a sofa and with Robin telling them, "I'm going to tell you how I met your father." Just like future Ted does in the very first episode of the show. Yes, this episode ends with us and her finding out that not only she's not pregnant, but that she can never have kids. Those kids were in her imagination. But the mirroring was already made. If we, as the audience, thought that Ted and the mother were endgame, because of everything up to this point and the freaking title, this mirroring cemented that at least on a different but a parallel level, so were Barney and Robin. The deeper those feelings went, the deeper we saw into Barney. He stopped being this caricature and became a real person. Eventually, after some twists and turns, Barney ended up proposing to Robin. The entirety of the last ninth season takes place during the weekend of their wedding. As I said, I think Barney had the best character arc out of the whole bunch. And then they finished this 9 season long journey with the most painful U-turn of all times. Almost as bad as Jaime Lannister leaving our Queen Brienne of Tarth in her robes in the middle of the night to go back to Cersei. Oh my god, the asshole. In that ending episode, we learned that Barney and Robin get divorced after spending an entire season at their wedding. It felt like, what was even the point then? They took him, showed us that he can learn, evolve, love, want to better himself, just to set him back to factory settings right back again. They destroyed his amazingly written redemption arc in a few minutes, set him loose into Manhattan so he can sleep with half of it, and then he gets somebody pregnant. Oh no, yeah, sorry. That was the girl. Not the one he got pregnant. No, the baby. That was the girl to make him stop. That was his arc all along. Not the 9 season long one. No, the one that took 1.5 scenes. When you think about it, Barney never had a real father, so he becomes one instead. One can even say that this was poetic. And to a degree, it is. But only that tiny part. Only if you kind of squint your eyes and look only at that and nothing else. This didn't feel good because it seemed like a lot of his growth was intertwined with his feeling towards Robin, because the majority of his journey was about opening up to real romantic relationship and stop viewing women as disposable objects. Yes, now he's a dad to a girl, but guess what? A man can be a great dad to a girl and be a shit man to women. Barney becoming a father is not the answer to his arc. It's unbalanced. No wonder that this excuse of an afterthought of an arc felt like we were cheated, because we were. He was. During the last season, in every episode that Robin and Barney feared that maybe he wasn't the marrying type, or maybe they will grow old and distant and stop having sex. In every turn, they got worried. The conclusion was that they will make it work. In grand gestures or small intimate conversation, they promise each other and to us that this will work. How are we not to paint Robin and Barney as endgame? Robin and Barney felt natural. They felt right. And I always thought that Robin and Barney worked a lot better than Robin and Ted. When at the very beginning of a show titled How I Met Your Mother, the protagonist tells his offsprings that this is their Aunt Robin, you know what I'm not gonna do? I'm not gonna invest myself into a couple that I know for 100% is not going to end up together. I'm here for the ride, I'm here for the mother. You promised me that this is how we met the mother, so honestly, at some point, I'm mostly waiting for the whole Robin thing to end so we can move on with the plot. Moreover, this whole Robin romance also started off so badly because it started off with Ted having insta-love for Robin. He only just met her and he told her that he loved her, when in reality, it was more likely that he was simply in love with the notion of being in love and the notion of being in love with her. That didn't feel natural. Barney gets to know Robin for a few years before he falls for her. While Ted puts Robin on a pedestal, Barney sees her as an equal. While Ted goes blindly after the idea of Robin instead of Robin herself, at one point even convincing himself that he will be okay with having kids in Argentina. I know it's just for 1 second, but the mere notion of it. Robin and Barney vibe on the same page. They understand each other's crazy. And yeah, I know too soon after Robin and Barney finally get together for the first time, we see that horrendous episode that shows how the relationship wore them down. But honestly, if that was the case, Robin should have looked 10 times worse when she was with Ted. And her ending makes no sense at all. In the one and only scene we get to see of Barney and Robin married, it's when they're fighting, and it's their sort of last fight in which they understand that this is not working. And it's not working because her constant traveling is too much for Barney. Come again? It's too much for Barney. Barney's the only one that is, free spirit is a bad word, but like strong enough, independent enough, and like unconventional enough to handle her ambition, career, and traveling. Throughout the show, he was nothing but supportive and the most supportive. He made her that video resume, for Christ's sakes. And okay, you know what? Okay, let's pretend for argument's sake that her traveling was too much for Barney, but it won't be too much for Ted. Ted, who has two twin kids who probably go to school and football practice and have friends and a basic need of stability in their lives. That's the guy who is going to be more supportive of said traveling. If you were going to force the divorce on Barney and Robin, at least pick a reason that makes sense, because this is just dumb. Also, once again, must we remind ourselves that Robin Scherbatsky always put her career first and never wanted kids. But then they get her and Ted together while he has two twin kids. Those kids are still kids. Even if they're not babies or toddlers, tweens and teenagers still need guidance and parenting. How is that dynamic going to work? From everything that we've seen on that show, what scenario sounds more likely? Barney and Robin working and traveling together? Or Robin sitting at a dinner table with Ted and his kids? This is literally what she always said she didn't want.
Literally.
Even if she would have divorced Barney, she wouldn't go back to Ted. She would continue traveling the world alone and happy, or just found somebody else who would see her as she was. Putting her back into a studio apartment, almost as if waiting to be rescued, to recreate that blue French horn scene felt like a crime against her character. She never needed to be saved. Barney saw that.
No guy's gonna say, "Who's your daddy?" to Robin Scherbatsky. You're your own daddy.
I'm honestly getting angry right now. Isn't it sad that I need to call her the mother? Because if I say Tracy, some of you might take too long to realize who I'm talking about. I would even take a little bit too long to realize who I was talking about. The namesake character, the love at the end of the Yellow Umbrella, arrived to our lives at the 9th season. Well, the last second of the 8th, but who's counting? After such a long time of Ted being overly picky with girls, after listening to future Ted describe the mother, after waiting for her while really hyping her up so much and for so long, I think most of us thought, well, whoever the mother is going to be will probably going to be a bit disappointed, because our expectations were through the roof at that point. And then waltzed in Christine Milioti and just knocked it off the park. As much as I want to give her the entirety of the credit, a portion of that has to go to the writers. All of them together created a lovable, believable character. She was cheesy enough for Ted and cool enough for us. She was compassionate, funny. She fitted with the group perfectly, which is really not a giving. All around, just like the best answer to the question we waited for 9 seasons. I don't think the creators realized just how that was not a given. That after such a long time of wait, that we would not be disappointed. That we would connect with her on such a level. And for her to be basically the sidest of side characters, a plot device really, a walking, talking, bass-playing womb, is more than heartbreaking. They've wasted this character. Rest in peace, Tracy. I wish we had more time with her, more season, like at least another season. But no, we had to wait, and wait we did. From 2005 for some of us. By the end, we were so buzzing with expectation, with excitement, knowing that we were going to finally meet the mother, and knowing that the whole thing is going to happen while the other power couple was getting married was like the cherry on top. This is what they led us to believe. Yes, you can mislead us and give us surprises and twists, please do. But a good twist will make the audience go and reread or rewatch the whole thing to see all of those little clues and foreshadowing that were missed. This felt more like a, haha, gotcha. Like they forcefully tried to trick us, to out-clever us. But this didn't feel clever. This just felt off. Can they do this? Of course they can. This is art. And more importantly, it's their art. The show was unique in more ways than one, and they never really truly wrote a pure comedy. It always had its dramatic, even tragic shades, like with the storyline of Barney's dad, or even Marshall's dad, the brilliant episode, Bad News, where Marshall's dad dies. The tragic, the melancholic was never not a part, at least a little bit, of the show's fingerprints. So what was the difference this time? Why those moments, Marvin's death, for example, felt sad yet beautifully fitted into the narrative, felt almost natural, and the mother's death didn't. I actually think it comes down to this, the natural feeling of it. You see, when you tell a story, in the beginning, your audience might not know your style yet. Is this Twilight, in which nobody dies, not ever, not even if our heroes are outnumbered by deadlier vampires? Or is this Game of Thrones, in which everybody dies, the mom, the dad, the main character, and the pets combined? As the story progresses, we, as the audience, get a feel of the story. We understand our standing with the creators. We understand the subgenre that we're in. We sort of know what to expect, even in cases like Game of Thrones, in which is to expect the unexpected. It's like when you're listening to somebody sing a song, let's say opera. You know what this is. You know what to expect. Now, I'm not saying don't mix things up and twist things up. And opera with rock or rap is freaking amazing. But let's take Game of Thrones, for example, again. Imagine that after everything that we saw on that show, it would have ended with the death of the Night King, the death of Cersei, Dany would become queen, Jon would marry her, and even though we know she can get pregnant, she somehow does get pregnant, ending the whole show with Jon and Dany looking lovingly into the sunrise while their 3 black and blonde haired kids play with a dragon. This sounds off. Because this is not the style of Game of Thrones. You knew that even in the best case scenario, the ending will have death in it. It will have sadness. This is not as if somebody tried to mix opera with rock. This is as if somebody tried to sing opera and sang it off key. How I Met Your Mother had its sad, dramatic, and even tragic moments. But they were that. There were moments. There were spices to make the comedy feel deeper and the story better. Killing off our love interest that we were searching for, talked about, longed for 9 seasons is not on par with the whole show. This was them singing off key. The negative reaction to the ending was fueled by sadness, grief, and anger towards the misfortune of characters we loved and the ending they got, as opposed to the ending we thought they deserved. The demolishing of our character arcs and stories. And all of this really happened because the creators planned the ending from the get-go. They set off to write this story of how Ted waited long enough and wore Robin down into the shadow of the woman she was and wanted to be until she settled into his suburban nightmare.
And that, kids, is how you turn a no into a yes.
I'm just kidding. But that was what basically happened. This is the problem, I think. When you set out to write a story with an iron ending in your mind. Should you know where your story ends? Well, everybody has their own opinion about that. I believe Stephen King actually is very much against it. And even though I'm no Stephen King, I think you should know a little bit the direction in which you're steering your boat. But, and there's a big but here, you should be fluid. You should be careful. If you wanted Ted and Robin to end up together, don't make Robin and Barney a better couple. You need more storylines because the show got more successful than you thought, thus becoming longer. Either find different storylines or refuse the money and end the show sooner. Or be fluid enough to see that what you have created will no longer make sense with the ending you've planned. Be open-minded to the possibility of changing it. But they didn't do it. They stuck to their guns. And we got robbed of a beautiful redemption arc, a great unconventional couple, and the best depiction of a manic pixie dream girl turning into a real person. We got a wonderful song, and right at the end of it, they sang it off key. I am dying to know what you thought. Were you as traumatized as I was? Were you the odd ones that actually liked Ted and Robin ending up together? Why? Please tell me why. What else did you think they messed up? Like and subscribe because I like to rant about stories.